Speaking of Democrats being concerned about COVID, if you're concerned about COVID, then you should be really concerned about Andrew Cuomo's role in these nursing home deaths. Not just the fact that, like, look, maybe you could say, like, oh, I don't know how you could do that. I honestly, like,
no, he needs to resign. I mean, this is like as egregious as anything. He's under investigation by the FBI right now, and yet
yes.
you still have Democrats like, I don't know. I mean, I'm a Cuomo-sexual.
They covered up the deaths, or at least, sort of hid it in the numbers. And the big thing to me is that he also pushed through immunity for these nursing homes in terms of like the way that so that he could just basically warehouse people into these places. And if they die, they die.
And he in his press conferences, he put it on them. He was like, that's the free market. That's the free market. If they can't do their job, they're going to get shut down, basically. I mean, and then meanwhile talking
unless they have immunity from any type of accountability,
which they got via campaign donations to Andrew Cuomo.
Here is Jen Psaki being asked by Jonathan Karl at the press conference about Cuomo's role in these nursing home deaths. Remember, at one point they were talking about Cuomo maybe for AG. He very early on in the primary said, like, my job number one is going to be getting Joe Biden to win. Something to that effect. Here's Jen Psaki.
Okay, I want to turn to another controversy that raged this week. Andrew Cuomo under fire for allegedly not being transparent and misleading on the number of nursing home deaths in New York. Last spring, President Biden cited Andrew Cuomo as the gold standard for leadership during the pandemic. Take a listen.
Your governor of New York's done one hell of a job. I think he's sort of the gold standard.
So now we've seen that Governor Cuomo has allegedly undercounted nursing home deaths, misled legislators in New York, and he called a New York Assemblyman Ron Kim, raising questions, basically threatening to destroy him, I think was his actual words. So does President Biden still consider Andrew Cuomo the gold standard when it comes to leadership on the pandemic?
Well, John, we work with Governor Cuomo just like we work with governors across the country. He's also chair of the NGA. So he plays an important role in ensuring that we're coordinating closely and getting assistance out to people of his state and to states across the country. And we'll continue to do that. And there, of course, will be a process. The investigations will leave that to others to determine, the appropriate law enforcement authorities to determine how that path is going to move as we look forward. But we are going to continue to work with a range of governors, including, of course, Governor Cuomo, because we think the people of New York, the people of states across the country need assistance, not just to get through the pandemic, but to get through this difficult economic time. And that's where our focus remains.
All right, but Jen, my question was, does President Biden still believe that Andrew Cuomo is the gold standard, represents the gold standard on leadership during this pandemic? Just a yes or no. Does he
well, John, the president, well, it doesn't always have to be a yes or no answer, John. I think the president.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
Well, you could also say you could do like, well, we now would consider more like, like a lead standard, toxic lead standard.
Well, I mean, look, that like, this is going to be a problem. This is going to be a problem for the Democrats to have to own this guy. I mean, again, to bring it back to where we were in April or so, there was a value in Cuomo's doing these press conferences on a daily basis, especially us in New York, actually giving facts when Trump was just not doing anything. And so when we were in crisis mode, yes, that was comforting. It's been a long time since then. It's been nearly a year at this point, and that is a rock bottom standard that we should be holding him to, because we've seen that he got this national platform because New York was hit so hard. He responded with facts and daily press conferences, which led into a book deal. These nursing home numbers threaten that book deal. And so or the legitimacy of him as a COVID savior.
Yes.
And so he covered it up. And the Democrats, if they want to maintain a moral high ground on the pandemic, which will still be key, and I think will still be in people's minds come 2022, they need to reject this guy because he epitomizes corruption surrounding COVID and acted like Trump in this way. He lied and deceived people.
And there's also there's a bigger issue, I would argue as well, not just his own sort of personal brand. In the lead up, in the less than 10 years of when COVID hit, the number of public hospitals in this country in the state were closed at about 10 to 20%. During the beginning of COVID, he was making massive cuts to Medicaid. And all of this leads to less capacity in our system. I mean, we've talked about this. I think we even brought it up the other day. Less capacity in our system. So the need that he felt to send people to nursing homes was a function of decisions that he had made over the years before, and these decisions are not simply about budgetary. What you're doing when you cut public hospital capacity is you are jacking up the rates in private hospitals, and you are jacking up the revenue for these private hospital groups, those same people who give him gobs of money. So the problem wasn't just with what he did with COVID, although that was horrific. It was that obscures the decisions that he made before this that implicated public health. And all of this combined is it's basically like, how do I obscure this fact and this failure from it was a success from his perspective, a failure from the perspective of public health. How do I obscure that? Well, I move people into into nursing homes and create all sorts of other risks. Well, how do I obscure that? I obscure it by making these companies not liable. I obscure it by not releasing the death numbers, and on and on and on. I mean, this guy, this is a long tail event that goes, and even maybe a long snout event. I mean, these decisions that he made preceded the failures of COVID, and then they trailed afterwards. And now it's just breaking right now. Vice News reports Andrew Cuomo former staffer, Lindsey Boylan, alleges that the governor asked her to play strip poker and once kissed her. I mean, she left the Cuomo administration amid charges of abuse, that she was abused.
Yeah.
And
I mean, and we have to look more into Lindsay's story here, but we'd heard rumblings about this. I mean, like, okay, you said that so well, just about how everything is a fix-it for a cover-up for, what his corruption has caused, the latest dilemma, because he behaves in this kind of mobster way as like a bit of, he gets a payment from nursing homes or from private hospitals. He does their bidding. It causes a crisis. He covers it up. He bullies people to get his way and then moves on to the next thing, all while he's branding himself as some sort of savior. And then there's the interpersonal stuff with the threatening, allegedly, but very well documented, backed up by Bill de Blasio, that he's done other things like this, of Ron Kim. And then the harassment allegations by Lindsey Boylan. I mean, the guy is a well-documented bully. He's blue Trump. There's really no more we can say about it. He's entitled from a father who made something of himself and then passed it on to his son, who was less competent. And it's the same dynamic. And so what we're going to see in 2022, lots of Cuomo talk from Republicans, lots of talk about how those checks were not $2,000. These are entirely preventable landmines that the Democrats are running into. And the Biden administration and Jen Psaki better get their talking points updated quick, because this is going to snowball really badly.
Yep. Lead
Standard. Yes.